Hello everybody and welcome back to YouTube Mindful Moments and a special premiere. This presentation's about ancient technology. One of my favourite areas of study and research is our ancient ancestors and the development of their culture and language. I believe that too many assumptions were made by early explorers, archaeologists and other groups who labelled artefacts and structures with modern concepts that may not have existed in prehistory. We're now beginning to uncover new ideas that shed a whole new perspective on things. Okay. So get ready to hear some rather unconventional and mind-blowing hypotheses that might alter your opinion about what our ancestors knew and the amazing abilities that they had in terms of technology, engineering, art and cultural communication. I feel certainly that surpass anything modern man can even begin to imagine. I've been thinking about language and our early ancestors. We all know that language is a system of symbols, sounds, gestures that can be used to convey messages on a cognitive or emotional level. It's also logical to surmise that written language evolved later on to record and share information that was perhaps more important. But what is the earliest form of written language? Perhaps this is worth considering. Maybe the markings carved into rocks or the shapes found in places like the Nazca lines were as obvious to the people who made them as our internationally recognised emojis and pictographic signs. I've also learned through my independent research that many groups believed that some information was so sacred that it was forbidden to write it down and was passed on through the generations to a select few who might teach about moral behaviour or historical accounts through stories and songs. Anything that produces a feeling or a thought that is commonly understood is, in my opinion, language. A beautiful necklace or delicately carved flute for a loved one, or a standing stone with a mark for a special day on the solar calendar, or a particular wave of the arm, as certain tribes used to use to actually indicate danger, funnily enough. The problem is that we do not understand the cultures of the past, and therefore their languages are somewhat foreign to us. For instance, perhaps a smile in prehistoric days was a sign of aggression by showing your teeth to warn the other person that you were feeling threatened or angry. The Quetzal bird was loved and respected by the Maya people of Central America. It seems ludicrous to me that so many seem to assume that much of the art and buildings were created by primitive people with no appreciation of culture or social values required to live in harmony with nature and/or other living beings. Some were built on the top of old monuments, which added not only to their size, but the emphasis to the great importance of the location and centralisation for annual meeting places, such as the solstice or equinox, where festivals would be held and people would come from far and wide to exchange their goods and prepare for the next season.
The sound comes back. Why it sounds like a bird? Don't ask me that. Like a bird. Don't ask me that. Because we don't know. But this is really impressive. Experts from different countries, experts in acoustics, they have come here to study, to try to know how this is possible. They leave the country, it's like they...
And it works all four sides the same.
Used to be, now only two. Yeah, the north and the west. You see?
My point is that making assumptions about our ancestors has created too many misnomers and poorly translated messages that were painstakingly created by our long-gone predecessors. The terms ritual, temple and tomb are all too commonplace amongst the early antiquarians and often resounding evidence of modern minds being unable to imagine how life was back then, and the true purpose of what some of these amazing archaeological significant sites were made for. I now intend to highlight some more incredible technology and cultural beliefs that may have, in my opinion, blatantly been overlooked and ignored. There are many ancient places with incredible acoustics, cleverly built into the design, which makes it quite clear that this technology was understood by many civilizations of the past. I feel that maybe it's no coincidence, and even evidence that resonance and acoustics were often incorporated by cultures. When you consider the Whispering Gallery of St. Paul's Cathedral or ancient amphitheatres, but perhaps the knowledge goes much further back to early man, who understood sound and the importance of music and resonance in terms of spiritual well-being and better frequencies for harmonious communication.
Музыка, застывшая в камне.
If you're with me so far and still listening, let's take this a little bit further. I did some research on the science behind this acoustic technology, and here's a little clip. The full video is in the description box below.
Human voices clearly from the stage. Scientists think a lot of this has to do with the design of the steps and the way they interact with sound waves. See, when a sound wave encounters a surface, it often gets scattered into different directions as it reflects off the surface and goes through a process called diffraction. Part of the wave may bounce off the surface and collide with another part of the wave, canceling itself out in a given direction. But in other directions, the reflected sound waves may line up in such a way that they reinforce each other, so the echo amplifies the sound in certain directions. How exactly this plays out all depends on the geometry of the obstacle. At Epidaurus, sounds between 100 and 500 hertz tend to interfere with each other as they bounce off the steps and somewhat cancel each other out. But higher-pitched sounds above 500 hertz reinforce themselves as they scatter. Conveniently, a lot of background noise, like whispers, shuffling, and wind, tends to be fairly low pitch, while the performers' voices would have been higher pitched. 500 hertz is still pretty high for a human voice, but scientists believe that higher tones of performers' voices would have carried through and people's brains would have filled in the missing tones. Now, we don't know how well the Greeks understood the physical mechanisms that made this theater a success, but even if the effect was just a happy accident, researchers think it may have inspired later Greek and Roman theaters, which were built with similar designs.
I'm sure many of you have heard about the hypgeum in Malta, the incredible underground complex, which not only has a lot of unanswered questions, such as the elongated skulls that they found, most of which disappeared. So I'm not going to go into detail, and there are links in the description box below. But the one thing that is currently being studied is the acoustic qualities of the oracle chamber that seems to resonate at a particular frequency, a megahertz frequency, that is well known now for being very essential for meditation, for healing qualities, and harmonious resonance. Newgrange is a Neolithic monument in County Meath, Ireland, constructed around about 5,500 years ago. The corbelled vaulted ceiling rises 6 meters above the floor and forms an artificial cave or spire with a cap on the top. On the 21st of December 1967, Professor O'Kelly was the first antiquarian to discover the amazing light technology that was built into this place, and he wrote in his journal, "A narrow beam of light entered the passage through the roof box, passed between a gap in the passage roof slabs, and landed almost at my feet. Then it began to move forward across the floor of the chamber. As the sun was slowly rising and moving west, more light came through the roof box, and the narrow beam fanned out across the floor. Gradually, the whole burial chamber became illuminated, and this lasted about 17 minutes. I was absolutely astonished. I couldn't have expected anything so dramatic. I could feel the spirits of the dead all around me and really expected to hear a voice speak." Chavin Huantar, Peru, is nearby the Huaraz zone, which is abundant in natural hot springs, which may offer some clues to why this location was so significant. There are labyrinths of passages and galleries with no windows in them, although there are some smaller tunnels that allow air to pass through the structure. Archaeologists are still studying the meaning and use of these galleries and vents, and some exciting new ideas about the perfect resonant frequency, much the same as the hypgeum in Malta, has begun to come to light. Research on the acoustics of these structures and how they enhance and control sound waves, which is definitely breaking new ground to help us understand the culture and traditions of these people that frequented and built these enigmatic places. Chavin also has many artistic and construction features that appear in other prehistoric sites around the world, including petroglyphs, which may represent language. But what excites me the most is the air manipulation through the specially designed ducts. Perhaps the Chavin pottery could hold a clue to the acoustic qualities of this site in terms of changing air pressure and winds at certain times of the year.
That represents a fisherman, and the pottery will mimic the sounds of the seagulls. And it's true. Those sounds are true. I know the sounds, the real ones.
Baby seagulls.
We are all familiar with the international pictographic signs, such as the ones used at airports, but most of us are still puzzled by the significance of the handbag. However, I'm sure that if our ancient ancestors had come across dinosaur footprints or fossils during their quarrying activities, they may have been able to imagine that they were made by some creature from the past. Modern man cannot read smoke signals, but many of our ancient ancestors knew exactly what they said. Maybe these handprints are not just random art, but conveyed a very important message to those people who visited the place. So perhaps these swirling patterns found on sites all around the world actually have some relevance to the acoustic qualities to be enjoyed there. Understanding language is never easy, and if it hadn't been for the Rosetta Stone, perhaps we might still be struggling to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphs. We have learned that light and shadow was often used as a secret way to convey important information to those who knew what to look for, like the calendar in Arizona or the snake at Chichen Itza. But the patterns on the Pasharo stone are still a mysterious enigma, which, like Ogham, is very tough to comprehend. Megaliths and certain types of rock with acoustic qualities, such as the ringing stones, have a dense crystalline makeup, and we know that this can be used to store information and regulate fluctuating frequencies, like a quartz clock. In fact, our entire technological world could not work without that tiny crystal we call silicon chip. Devices such as smartphones, tablets, high-performance computers, data centers, and the internet. And the artificial frequencies and sound waves that made by man are everywhere. Worth thinking about, perhaps. So let's take a moment to consider, what can we learn from our ancestors? I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you for sharing this mindful moment. See you all soon. Bye. Bye.